And hello and welcome to what we hope is certainly not an abbreviated version of the Marist Football Network, a live on-site pregame show. I'm Phil Trino, pleased to be joined, of course, by Mr. Matt Suter.
And we got some other group members as well. We got Mike Quinn and Madam Master Bertie to our right. And then Rachel Blair is, God knows where. She's somewhere on the other side of campus right now doing some production work for us. But like I said, we'll be here for as long as the weather allows us, really. We'll try to take you right up until about 15 minutes before kickoff, talking about all things Marist football and scouting today's game against Campbell.
So here's where we stand. It is the Camels of Campbell making the trip up to
Fighting Camels.
Fighting Camels, yes. And their mascot, Gaylord. To Poughkeepsie, New York take on the Marist College Red Foxes. It is a Pioneer Football League Conference matchup, two league opponents, and I think a reason why we were so excited about this matchup in particular, beside it being only the third home game for Marist, is that we have seen Pioneer Football League play develop during the past 3 weeks. So now we sort of have a basis of comparison to talk about all the teams in the league.
And it's really quite interesting how the league has played out so far this year. You have 3 teams that are 3-0. And everyone else in the conference is actually below 500 in conference play, and each of those teams that are 3-0 received top 25 votes this week.
That's right, and so if I may actually run down those standings quickly, you mentioned the 3 teams that are 3-0. That would be Drake, Jacksonville, San Diego. They're at the top of this league. Then Butler, Campbell, Dayton, Marist have all posted a 1-2 record in conference play. Then you have the winless teams, Davidson and Valparaiso, and also Morehead State in the mix as well at 1-2. So this is finally entering week 4 here in conference play. We're able to see how everything is shaped out.
And it's really sort of a unique conference because there is a lot of parity here, and I'm not talking about Jim, but in terms of how you have a couple teams that are 3-0, and then you look at a team like Valparaiso, who has not won this year. They're on a 20-plus game losing streak. They're really one of the worst teams in all of FCS. But again, you have teams that do have a top 25 votes, such as Jacksonville, Drake, and San Diego, and those teams have sort of been staples in the PFL for a while, and those are teams that everyone can sort of count on to put up good numbers and have a good season like they are this year.
Now, if you're a Marist football fan, or if you're someone that has just come to check out this contest from the local Hudson Valley community, some of these teams may not seem familiar because they're not MAC teams. There is, as you know, the MAC football conference was dissolved in 2007. All the teams we listed are national in every sense of the word.
The closest opponent that Marist has is Dayton out in Ohio when it comes to PFL play, but they travel, again, to Jacksonville, San Diego. They go to Iowa. I mean, there's teams all over the country. So, again, the MAC disbanded. There's no longer an Iona. There's no teams such as that. And then even teams locally like Hofstra no longer has a program, and they provide, produce some really good players like Marcus Colston, teams that have had a lot of success, but they folded their programs. But Marist, of course, renovated Tenney Stadium back in 2007 for this facility, and now it's propelled them, into this national conference.
Of course, and part of what we try to do here at the Marist Football Network is really promote some of the storylines that you get on a team with literally 100-plus players currently dressing and players from 14 different states.
And it's really something else, again, and that's part of what the Pioneer Football League has done, is put Marist on the national map, because it does travel to Iowa, it does travel to California, like we mentioned, and it does travel to North Carolina last year, and we'll talk about that a little bit now, looking at the matchup with the Campbell Fighting Camels. This is only the 3rd time that these teams have actually played each other, dating back to when Marist joined the PFL 2 seasons ago, and Marist has really dominated this series. They've won the first 2 contests fairly easily, and they come back looking for a 3rd straight win against Campbell.
Yes, certainly. You mentioned the 2 victories captured by the Red Foxes. Those were both 20-plus point decisions for Marist, so 2 comfortable victories. A win, of course, today would make them 3-0 so far against the Fighting Camels. Now, speaking about Campbell, this is a team that runs the option offense. It's very interesting to watch. Marist happened to see Sacred Heart run the same exact offense, and were able to walk away from that contest with a high level of success.
And Marist has a defense that's sort of suited for the option, to defend the option, because Marist has a very good run defense, and they have a very fast defense. So Campbell will try to use some interesting schemes. Again, you mentioned that their quarterback doesn't really like to run. He looks for the pitch. He looks to give the ball off, and Marist is well to adapt to that because, again, they push all 11 guys to the ball, and that works in their advantage against a tough running team.
And as you mentioned, the whole option offense based off of literally when the quarterback has options once he receives a snap from the center, as far as whether you'll take it himself to the left, to the right, or obviously, of course, passing reads as well. The Pioneer Football League is, we were discussing this before we came on air, the premier passing league in the entire football championship subdivision.
Yeah, this conference averages over 260 yards a game passing, so that's a lot when you look at teams like Marist, and that almost sort of goes into that factor that Marist is not a fantastic rushing team. They are more of a pass-oriented team, but Campbell is on the opposite side of that spectrum, rushing for 180-plus yards a game, and they come with 3 main guys. They have 3 guys that average over 50 yards a game, and that stems all out of that option, offense.
And I think the teams that have made such an impression on me in regard to the passing attack, of course, have to be Dayton and Jacksonville. Just we've been able to watch them over the past 3 years. Great, really strong aerial attacks. A little bit of a different dynamic today.
Absolutely. We saw Josh McGregor, the quarterback from Jacksonville, the last time Marist played here at Tenney Stadium, and that's a team that really likes to throw the ball. They like to air it out. Josh McGregor just became the Pioneer Football League's all-time leader in passing yards with over 9,700. So it's really been an interesting dynamic, and like we said, I think we're both expecting a little bit something different today with Marist. We'll still focus on the passing game, but Campbell is really, really rush heavy.
And let's take a look currently at the schedule for Marist College, how they have come in today's contest. They opened up 3 road contests. The first game at home was not until the 24th of September back against Georgetown. That was sort of an odd thing as well, I think. We had to wait literally a month since being back to school to open up with them.
And that's not something that we've seen in the past. A lot of times, that first football game is one of the first things that freshmen get to experience on campus. One of their first Fridays, they come down to Tenney Stadium for a 7 o'clock kickoff. But instead, this year, as you mentioned, they had to wait till late September for a noon kickoff. So it was a little bit different dynamic. And, you know, it not necessarily threw off the Marist football team, but it's a little uncomfortable when you have to travel for 3 road games before you actually get to play in front of your home fans.
And a big dynamic, speaking about that, is during the course of our weekly interviews with the coaching staff of Marist, Associate Head Coach and Defensive Coordinator Scott Rumsey told us, you know, my guys have been out here playing every day for 3 hours in front of empty stands. So it took literally quite a while, for 3 weeks' time, for them to see all the fans coming out to support them.
And now it's their 3rd time at home. Again, they played back-to-back games at home in 2 and 3 weeks ago before taking on Davidson last week when they got that win against Davidson, their first PFL win. So it's nice that they're back on campus. The only downfall to this is that it is mid-semester break, so a lot of students went home. So most of their fan stay will probably be based on the parents and the family members and community members, and they're sort of losing that fan aspect.
Now, there have been other Marist athletic events going on. There recently was a Marist soccer game versus Iona. So some people certainly have lingered around to support these contests, and we're seeing fans trickle in slowly but steadily, definitely. A lot of Campbell orange and black, which is nice to see.
And it's a little interesting to see Campbell, again, certainly nowhere near Poughkeepsie on the map. But again, they travel well, as we saw them 2 years ago when they made their first trip to Poughkeepsie. We saw a lot of Campbell fans, and we're seeing that again today. And hopefully the weather's going to hold off. We had a little bit of rain earlier. There's not too much in the forecast. We got some blue skies coming in, so it looks like it could be in and out. But certainly the stands will be filling up today, as we can even see across the field behind the Campbell bench some fans trickling in as well.
And let's run down the remainder of the Marist College Red Foxes football schedule. Today, of course, home against the Campbell Fighting Camels. Looking ahead next week to October 22nd, that's an away game at Butler. Then 2 home contests on October 29th and November 5th. That they will host Drake and Valparaiso before finally finishing up all the way out on the left coast, taking on San Diego.
And it's sort of a nice finish for Marist. November 12th, they get to go to sunny San Diego, but it's a tough end of the season because they do have Drake at home. Drake, again, one of the 3-0 teams in the league. They have Valparaiso, who is arguably one of the worst teams in all of FCS. And then again, they have to travel out to San Diego to finish with an FCS powerhouse in San Diego. So it's been a lot of back and forth for this team, starting with Sacred Heart, then going to Dayton. And there hasn't really been one stretch where they faced a tough team week in and week out. And I think that plays to their advantage.
No, well, certainly. And actually, speaking about that weather, unfortunately, the 53-plus players that will travel to make that trip out to sunny San Diego, the Marist Football Network will not be joining the team for that trip. It would be a wonderful opportunity, but not right now.
Not yet. I mean, we're going to try our best to convince Coach Faraday, at least you and me, right, Phil?
Yes. Actually, speaking about travel, quick note I saw this morning, Campbell yesterday, they actually ran through their practice on Army's turf practice facility up at West Point. They actually received a tour as well of the entire facilities there.
And that makes a lot of sense because, again, it is a long travel, so they get up here a couple days early. They're not necessarily using the same exact facility that they'll play on the following day, but again, you mentioned using the turf surface. The turf has become almost commonplace in college football, but it does play a little bit different than grass, and there actually are different types of turf, you know, in terms of the length of the little blades of quote-unquote grass. So it does have a bit of an effect on the game, but again, for today, the weather in terms of how slick the surface is really shouldn't be a factor, at least not in the early going.
No, certainly. And speaking about how the Fighting Camels make their way to Poughkeepsie today, looking ahead at how they've performed recently, they did pick up a 38-23 victory over Butler. The past 2 contests for them, they were dropped, tough games, a loss to Drake and a loss to Jacksonville. There you see right away the haves and the have-nots in the PFL.
And Campbell does have 2 wins. They are 2-3 overall. One of those wins came against the Apprentice School. I've never even heard of the Apprentice School. I'm not sure if it's even Division I. It was a 76-0 drubbing and a victory, and they rushed for over 400 yards. So that is one of their 2 wins on the year. But again, when you stack them up against the Jacksonvilles, it does become a little bit tougher against the Drakes. And this should be an even matchup between these 2 teams that are both, right around 500 in the PFL and have had some good wins, but have also had some bad losses.
And you mentioned the Apprentice School on the media game notes that are given out to all the press on Campbell's. I was actually noticing right on the front page in a big bold letters it said the Fighting Campbells were pleased to announce that they played a new opponent this year, the Apprentice School. They weren't very worthy opponent apparently.
No, and I can honestly say I've never heard of that school. And again, a win is a win is a win. It doesn't really matter who you play, but it's hard to stack up the Apprentice School with the likes of a Jacksonville or a Drake because of how different you saw that. Again, Campbell beat the Apprentice School 76-0, and then they gave up 57 points to Jacksonville in a 57-21 loss. So there really is a lot of parity in that schedule.
Campbell also opened up their season with a 41-14 loss at the hands of Old Dominion, who is currently a team ranked in the top 25 of FCS play. They are, when I checked this morning, as of October 10th, ranked 18th.
And that's the thing, the PFL actually does not get an automatic bid into the FCS playoffs. It's the winner of the PFL who plays the winner of the NEC, I believe, and then that winner goes to the playoffs. And it's a little disappointing because the PFL does have these strong teams. They do have a team that, anyone can be beat on any given day, but it seems like the PFL really isn't given the respect that it's earned over the last couple of seasons because of the success of some of the teams in the conference.
And as we stand today, 3 Pioneer Football League teams have received votes inside the top 25. Jacksonville, San Diego, and Drake are all in the mix there. We have seen in years past some PFL teams actually crack that top 25, which does wonders, I would imagine, for the league itself.
Because not a lot of people know what the PFL is, the Pioneer Football League, and it's sort of a strange name for a conference that is a national conference, the Pioneer Football League. You're not really sure what that is, but then you look at it and there's teams from all over the country, and it makes the recruiting for this conference very unique because some teams like Campbell are based, most of their players are based from North Carolina, as opposed to a school like Marist, where a lot of the players do come from New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut, but there are a handful of players from California, from Iowa, from Florida, so it adds a little bit of intrigue to these matchups.
Certainly, man. I think here's the bottom line when we're talking about college football. The game today and these games in the PFL, you mentioned the NEC as well, some other conferences, this is not the FBS. These are not the teams that you will see on ESPN on Saturday morning. Now, on the same token, these academic institutions that are high ranking, such as Marist, other schools in this region of the country, it allows them to have literally 100 plus males on campus, which certainly does wonders for a lot of the numbers, and I think it's an opportunity for these young men to continue to play football.
Exactly. There's these small liberal arts colleges where, again, the focus is still on academics. There's really not that real high-intensity program. And don't get me wrong, it is a Division I program. It still is high-level football, but it allows these students to play football who might not have been able to play at a Notre Dame or a Florida, just to name, of course, 2 of the most notable programs in the country. So it's a nice fit for them because, again, there is that focus on academics. It's a smaller community, so there can be a focus one-on-one with the student athletes.
And this has to be the place of the FCS, I think, certainly very, very competitive and as well. Marist able to reach out nationally as well. The recruiting, the success of its women's basketball program has done wonders for the brand of the school as well. Sort of the same storyline with football.
And just talking about the academic side of Marist for a little bit, just in the last 5 years, we've seen the acceptance rate of this school drop over 10%, which is really something that not a lot of schools can say, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to athletics. When you look at the addition of Marist to the PFL, and when you mentioned the success of the women's basketball team, and then just a few weeks ago, the men's soccer team went out to a tournament in Illinois. So Marist is really branching out into these national tournaments, these national conferences, and it's really putting them on the map and putting them up with the likes of these other elite Northeast academics institutions.
Well, certainly, man, and just to recap for all the folks that have walked by us, we are the Marist Football Network. My name is Phil Torino. He is Matt Suda. We have a couple folks off camera right now assisting us as well.
Yeah, and basically the idea behind this program was that we want to bring you all things Marist football. The only thing that we basically don't do is give a live stream of the game, and you can get that on Go Red Foxes for a subscription fee, of course. But it's nice because we have the interviews with players on camera that you might not be able to see. We have the analysis of the game that you might not be able to read or pick up on anywhere else. And we've been very fortunate that the Marist football team and the Marist athletic department in general has really worked with us, and they've done a lot for us in terms of just providing equipment for us or allowing us access for interviews. And I don't think we would be half of where we are right now without the help of Marist athletics.
No, not in the least bit, Matt. That's a great assessment. We've been very, very fortunate to have phenomenal access to all the players and coaches. In particular, a newcomer to head coach Jim Parody's staff this year, Tunde Boke, who's working with the defensive line, has been phenomenal. Every week booking us 2 players and 1 coach on Tuesday and 1 player on Wednesday for our in-studio show. And most recently, the entire offensive line.
Yeah, it was very neat. You can go down www.maristfootballnetwork.com, and we shot, I guess it was about 5 commercials with the members of the Marist offensive line, and then 1 Marist offensive line drop. And it's granted, we're the ones that came up with the idea and we wrote them, but I think they're pretty hysterical.
I think they're phenomenal. It's sort of a play on the This Is SportsCenter type commercial that ESPN has run, but it allows a lot of players to get FaceTime. Football is not basketball where you see all the faces all the time. The mask, I think, prohibits fans from getting to know the athletes individually.
And it does. And, you know, one of the great things that we can do is that we show these athletes when you don't get to see them. And like you said, it's not like there's 5 players on the field at once. There's 22 all wearing a mask. So you never really get to see the players behind what they are in their big pads and all that gear.
And Matt, we'll have to hold the phone just for one moment. We are pleased now to be joined by Tommy Riley's father. So Mr. Riley
hopping up on the stage right now. I don't know about that hopping part, but I'm standing up here. How are we doing, guys?
Oh, doing very well.
Thank you very much for joining us.
We're doing good.
So what's your assessment of the season so far? How do you think, you know, the team right now sitting at 2-4, what do you think about the season to this point?
It's been a little tough earlier in the season, but I think we're overcoming some of our, we'll say, roadblocks, you know, for the most part. The schedule's phenomenal. What I'm impressed with is Marist in general does a great job with the kids they bring in year after year, because it seems like the same class of people. And the kids are really good kids. They come from all over the country. But he's doing a phenomenal job with those kids.
Now, you have to pardon us, but just to make sure we get the family tree going correctly here. Well, we did speak with Tommy's grandfather recently. He was proud to join us. Yeah, so would that be your father?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, and he was so happy to join us. He spoke about how proud he was of Tommy in particular and coming back from the injury that he suffered as well.
Correct. Yeah, my dad's from South Philly, and we carry him all around. He's like an icon, you know. He has his own signature on the back of pictures for all the kids forever. He has Pop Riley with his own sticker that he puts on all the kids' pictures, and he's done albums for kids, for in high school, grammar school, for all the PAL programs that we've been through and coached. So.
Now, he told us that he travels to every game. Do you travel to every game as well? Do you follow the team all around the country?
Yes. If he says that we follow him, then we follow him. You know?
And what do you think of Marist being in this national conference? Tommy's freshman year, the team was an independent, so it was more Northeast teams. But then sophomore year, jumped to the PFL and started playing the likes of a San Diego and started playing the likes of a Jacksonville. What's your assessment of Marist jumping to that national conference?
Well, I think it's phenomenal. I mean, back in the day, we were being recruited by William and Mary, UMass, Northeastern. Just all up and down the East Coast, Rhode Island. We almost went to Rhode Island. But at the end of the day, it's like that doesn't even compare to our schedule because we're all over the country. You talk to people, Jonathan Grimes from William and Mary, who's an outstanding player, played with Tommy or played against Tommy for years and they're best friends. And he says they just love the schedule we're playing because of the things, the people they meet, the competition from all over the country is phenomenal. Drake and I were a little tough to get to. You know, we've got to take a horse and buggy from Minnesota, but for the most part, it's been phenomenal. Jacksonville, but it's really been a great career here.
And which of the locations that you've had a chance to travel to has been your favorite? Because this is unfortunately the only PFL stadium we have gotten to. So tell us about them, please.
Oh, so I should say Marist is number 1 because we're here. But off the cuff, I would say Campbell, who we're playing today. The people were phenomenal. I mean, really good people. We met a lot of really nice people down there. San Diego was nice. There was a lot of nice people out in San Diego. Just trying to think. I would say probably 1, 2. Davidson as well. And I would say they were my top 3.
And you were mentioning earlier all the schools that Tommy was looking at when he was in high school, where he was being recruited by. What sort of set Marist apart aside from that schedule, or was that really the deciding factor?
Well, I don't know if we have that much time on the air, but senior year before our championship game up at Rutgers, he had broken his foot. He broke the second and third metatarsal, so he actually had it pinned. So before he came to Marist, he had 2 screws in his foot. He played in the Taliaferro Bowl with 2 screws in his foot, and then in between, Jim had been looking at him and talking to him, Paraday, and then. Ironically, I got to tell this story. It's pretty insane. He says he didn't want to come up to Marist. He was just frustrated with recruiting. He comes up here. We force him into coming up here. He don't want to stay overnight. He stays overnight. He loves it here. He don't even tell us he wants to come here. He tells his sister he wants to come here. That's how insane this is. And I think all the boys are in this category mentally, you know. So if anybody's got any boys out there that are like this, it's really insane, you know what I'm saying? So then he turns around and he says, hey, I want to go to Marist and I want to play at Marist. So that's how that happened. It's crazy.
And just a final question for you before we let you go. Can you tell us a bit about the alumni that travel and do certain luncheons with the team as well?
The alumni is really phenomenal. We were down in Davidson last weekend. They had alumni outing there in one of the rooms, and I bet you there was 120 people there from Marist. Davidson was where we were, and then last year Campbell. It's just the turnout is phenomenal, and there's some guys that just follow game after game that just show up. And they hang out with us in the parking lot, and we just get to meet them, and it's really getting there. I mean, we're getting there every year. It just seems like it's getting better. It's getting better. And one of our attributes this year is we were able to recruit from South Jersey, which has been a little icon of mine as far as getting some of the kids from South Jersey to go to Rutgers, and they go to Penn State, and you know, maybe they don't get looked at, and they were looked at, and now they're upset. And they just not wind up, but they come to Marist and they love it. It's phenomenal. The Manginos are here with us. That's one. That's a Division I school that was a phenomenal competition. Cherokee High School, Nick Foster, he came here. He was, I think, 2-time All-State nose guard for Cherokee High School. He's here. So the recruiting's been really good.
Mr. Riley, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you very much. Enjoy the game.
We'll see you later. Thank you.
And just wrapping up quickly here, Matt, because we're just moments away from the PA announcer starting all the very important announcements for this contest. And that is, of course, a signal for us to wrap up with our live on-site radio show of the PFL.
And it looks like we got one more interview actually here. Quinn's our man on the floor over here, and it looks like we got one more here. So, again, we are the Marist Football Network. We're trying to bring you all aspects of Marist football except for a live feed of the game, but if you're here, you don't need that. So you can check us out online at www.maristfootballnetwork.com. This is part of our senior project. And along with Phil Torino, I am Matt Suter, and we got Mike Quinn, Amanda Mastroberti, and Rachel Blair all over the campus. We got Amanda and Mike here. Rachel disappeared a couple hours ago. We're still not sure where she is.
But folks, really, if you do get the moment, grab a card from Mike Quinn, who is behind me right now. Check out some of our content. You'll get an absolute kick out of the commercials and promos we just filmed with the offensive line. They are a great group, and we were so happy to get them in the mix.
All right, and it looks like we have another guest here.
Mr. Trolley.
Mr. Trolley is hopping up on stage with us. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Good to have you here. Pretty good. So we'll ask you the same question we asked Mr. Riley. What's your assessment of the season so far? You have 2 sons on the team. You know, we're sitting at 2-4. Where do you think the team is?
I think they can recoup the season by winning this game and probably the next home game. I don't know about the away game next week. I don't really know much about it. I think it's Drake. But you know, they can at least go they can win at least 5 or 6 games. It's still yet, so the season's not over for them. You know what I mean? So I think they have a shot. You know, what they need to do is the line has to protect. If they protect and give them the time to pass, either Riley or Chuck Looney, I think they can recoup this season.
And how about Campbell as well? They're sort of a team from North Carolina. It's out of the radar of Poughkeepsie. They do run the option offense. I'm not sure if your sons have mentioned that to you. Do you know much about Campbell?
No, not really. I know they beat them the last couple of years, I think. Okay.
So how closely do you follow the PFL? How old are your sons?
Well, they're just freshmen now, so I don't really. It is the first year I'm following it. I do. my sons grew up. Here's the history. My sons grew up with Nick Monero on the block. Nick used to come over to my house when he was 5 years old. They were all little kids, and they used to sleep over my house and everything. So, they grew up together, played Croton football together. They ended up going to the States back in 2008. And the both of them and both of my kids played. They were a receiver and a running back, so they all played together pretty tightly, and they know each other. How from playing flag football to regular tackle football. So they've been through a lot, and now they're playing college football. So what's better than that? It doesn't get any better than that.
And actually, to link to that, I've actually covered my fair share of Section 1 football because I'm a Neosho High School graduate, so I'm very familiar with all the football down there in Westchester. Some very good programs, Croton in particular as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's they've done well for the last 5, 6 years. So now I think they're like 5-0 this year. So it looks like they might be going to States again. Who knows? We'll see.
Now, growing up so close to Nick Monero, was that one of the deciding factors for your sons to come here? Was he a big push to come to Marist, or is that just a link that you had to the college?
I think it was a combination of both. It was Nick, and it was being so close, and Marist College has always got a great review on everything they've done, and I think it's rated top 25 in the country. So I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Marist? And it's a great program. So that's why we were sold on it, and they made a nice presentation to us, and that's when we decided to go with them. Yeah, and have both my kids on the team was even better yet.
And thank you really so much for joining us, and best of luck to you two sons as they progress through their college careers as well. Hopefully you have another great 3 years to watch them play here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on again. We're just a little restricted by time, but always stop by, and we'll be more than happy to spend some more time with you.
No problem. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. Enjoy the game.
Yes, let's win.
So just to wrap up, as we are just literally moments away from kickoff here, Marist College Red Foxes and the Fighting Camels of Campbell have made the trip from North Carolina all the way to Poughkeepsie. It is a Pioneer Football League contest.
And we try not to be all that biased here at the MFN, but when you look at Shooter the Fox and Gaylord the Fighting Camel, I think Shooter does have the edge as one of the best mascots, not only in the PFL, not only in the MAC, but also in the conference. He's pretty foxy right there, no pun intended, just sort of walking away. And there we go, we get away from Shooter, as he is so accustomed to seeing. So for Phil Torino, Amanda Mastroberti, Mike Quinn, and Rachel Blair somewhere on campus, I am Matt Suter. We are the MFN, the Marist Football Network. Check us out online, www.maristfootballnetwork.com.